Welcome into Steelers Latest, your daily spot for all news and information related to your Pittsburgh Steelers. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the content to stay up to date with all the news about your Steelers. But let's get right into things. Let's talk about the Pickens trade again. Now, I broke it down yesterday on all aspects of where the wide receiver room could go and why we got rid of George Pickens. But now let's try to predict the future a little bit. How uh how will this go down in the history books in Steelers trades? Now we know in the past, like the past 6 times we've traded a receiver in I think the past like 15 years or so. It seems like the receivers do fall off. The bad news is I think George Pickens went to a good situation in Dallas. A lot of media is hating on the Steelers right now, saying we should have got more value. I'm in complete agreement with that. The Steelers only getting a third round pick in the 2026 draft and a fifth round in the 2027 draft does not seem like it was very reasonable to me for George Pickens. I know he was entering the final year of his contract, but I think he was at least second round talent. We got a second round pick for Chase Claypool. Just think about that when you're thinking about this George Pickens trade because Chase Claypool, not a second round talent at all. He's almost out. I'm pretty sure he might be out of the league right now. I couldn't tell you what team he is on if he's not out of the league. But George Pickens, he actually has high upside. I know he's a head case, but there is high upside there, as I said yesterday. But now the picks, we're not going to know until like 3 years from now. So, 3 years from now, let me paint this picture. The Steelers don't hit on their draft picks. And if you look at recent history, you take a look at like the last 7 drafts from the Steelers. We're lucky if we get one player from each draft class that's like a hit. It's amazing if we get two at this point. But so it's kind of hard to imagine the Steelers hitting at this chance. I think just out of 10% chance we hit with these draft picks, especially in later rounds. Steelers are really struggling in later round draft picks as of recent. And Dak and Dallas have put up pretty solid passing numbers over the over his tenure there. He seems to be one of the top fantasy quarterbacks every year. My dad has him. He kicks my ass every year with Dak Prescott somehow, and we all think he's overrated. But he puts up big numbers, and Pickens at number 2, not going to be getting the most attention again because CeeDee Lamb's going to be the number 1 for that team as he's been for the previous 4 or 5 years now. So Pickens at 2 in Dallas. He's been working on his routes. He could put up prolific numbers if he's already had a high average yards per reception. I think it was over 17 yards this last season. It was ridiculous. It was close to the highest in the league. But you get him more receptions. He only had, I think, his top year might have been like 60 some receptions with the Steelers. I should have looked that up. My bad. That's on me. But if he can get up into that 80 catch range, 90 catch range with Dallas next year, he could go over 1,500 total yards, which would be insane, and a big check would be coming his way the next season. So, and if you look at the Steelers' previous worst trades, not a lot of them are that terrible. This could go down as the worst trade in Steelers history. Let me know what you think of that in the comment section, how you think this is all going to play out for the Steelers, and if it is going to be the worst trade in our franchise's history. But let's move on to Ryan Clark recently talked about the Steelers should just tank next year for Archie Manning. So let me paint the picture. I don't think we should tank. Let me put that out there first. I'm not a fan of the tanking strategy. I think it's lame. I think it's pretty classless in professional sports. You're paid to win games. You're not paid to lose to get good draft picks for next season because you can just continue that every year if you really wanted to. We've seen it in different leagues. Let's keep it out of the NFL. But tanking, if we are going to tank, we make no more signings this offseason. We make no more additions. Forget Rodgers. Forget trading for a quarterback. Forget signing another receiver. Forget everything, basically. You start trading players too. I'd give up Watt if we're gonna tank because Watt's gonna single handedly win us more games to take us out of the top 5 range in the draft next year. If we keep TJ Watt, he single-handedly wins us games every year. I think he's like 4 to 5 games a year. I would say Watt is a main factor of why we win those games. You could also, I mean, Watts, that's first round talent, maybe multiple first round picks if you are trying to ship Watt away. Also, final year of contract. You could also get rid of Highsmith now that we've drafted another outside linebacker. Just roll with Herbig and Sawyer next season. That's if we're gonna tank, I'm fully gonna commit. You gotta fully commit to these things. Highsmith, you get rid of him, you probably get a second or a third round pick for Highsmith also for next year's draft. I would start Will Howard because if we're trying to tank for a quarterback, I say just test out the rookie this year to see if he has it because that if he does win us games single handedly without any talent on the defensive side anymore, then I think you found your guy, and in next year's draft, you can just fill positions, fill the needs that you just shipped away because of all the draft picks. But even if the Herbig and Sawyer break out, you don't even need outside linebackers anymore. So you could just load up in next year's draft with all the picks you require if Howard does perform well. And if he sucks, that basically guarantees you a high top 5 pick in the league. But once again, I don't want to tank. Let me know in the comment section if you guys are into the tanking idea. Never really a big fan of that on my side of things, but that's just how I feel about tanking. Should stay out of the NFL. Let's talk about the divisional outlook, though. Right now, I've been avoiding talking about the division for a while. Things have kind of calmed down in the off season. We're post draft, couple weeks out of the draft now. Rookie mini camps are starting all across the league. Browns. Let's talk about them first. We're gonna be honest. They're the Browns. They always suck. I got them finishing last in the division, no matter what. Even if the Steelers do decide to tank, the Browns will figure out a way to be worse. They have big offensive questions. I don't think they address their offensive needs in free agency or the draft, really. And in the draft, the needs they did attack were in later rounds when I feel like that was the biggest need, the offensive side of the ball. The defensive side of the ball has been their strong suit for the previous years, but their first 2 picks, or their highest picks, were on the defensive side of the ball. And then in the later rounds, they took 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, and 1 tight end. It's a weird draft, in my opinion. It didn't make any moves in free agency, didn't address the offensive questions, didn't address really the biggest question of the quarterback position even though they got 5 on the lineup. No one knows who's gonna be the starter on that team. It could be Joe Flacco, could be Kenny Pickett, maybe Dylan Gabriel, maybe Shadur Sanders. I think that one's a long shot. I think Gabriel's also a long shot. So Pickett and Flacco, I think they're worst in the division. Bengals, they were able to keep Higgins. They're gonna have an explosive offense with Higgins, Chase, and Burrow once again. One of the top scoring offenses all of last year. They did address their defensive needs in draft. The only question I have, that first rounder they took, Shamar Stewart, he has the potential. The athleticism is off the charts, but in college the production just wasn't there. So that is always up in the air. Could be a bust. Also could be the next great defensive end in the NFL. Their secondary still could be a liability. They didn't address that need in the draft at all or in free agency much. Uh, but they should. They got really unlucky. If we're being honest, they got really unlucky last year. I think they lost like over 8 games when they scored 30 or more points. That's not going to happen again this year. I really don't think it can happen again this year. That is oddly unlucky. That is like generational level of just failure on the defensive side of the ball. I don't think it's going to happen again. I think they probably finished second this year. And the Ravens, their biggest signing, of course, biggest name signing, DeAndre Hopkins, wide receiver. They always seem to be lacking wide receivers. So that's probably a solid move for them. I think he's over the hill a little bit, though. Oh, they added depth to their roster in other parts of free agency. Nothing really too major, just more depth to their already solid roster. Uh, New kicker, of course. they got in the draft for football reasons. As they said, was graded one of the best draft classes too. Their first round pick, Malachi Starks, I think is going to pair perfectly with Kyle Hamilton, and it's just going to be a pain in the ass to play and pass on for the foreseeable future for us Steelers fans and every fan around the league. So that's brutal for everyone. They're probably again gonna win the division. I hate saying that as a Steelers fan, but I gotta be honest to everyone. Probably gonna win the division. So that is my thoughts on the division. If you can see, I got us landing three right now in the division. I'll expand more on that as the season gets closer and put in final predictions as we get closer to the year. But those were my way too early predictions, basically. And now let's wrap it up on another podcast as Will Howard and Jack Sawyer joined Big Ben on his football and podcast. Great watch. I'd recommend going watching it. The major takeaways I have from this is just Howard's a great communicator. I know that's a weird thing to say about another man, but he is just a great communicator when it comes to just explaining things, the stories he was sharing, just how he talked to Ben and Jack Sawyer and I'm blank Spence, the other co-host of football, and he showed usually in football, you don't give a shit about that. But at quarterback, if you look at some of the all-time greats in like Peyton Manning and Big Ben and even Troy Aikman, all the Tom Brady, all these guys have something in common, and it's their ability to communicate to the rest of their team. The confidence in themselves, it feels like just by the way they talk, by the way they carry themselves. I think it's a sign at quarterback. It's always nice when your quarterback's confident. That's really what I'm getting at. It's a something I do care about in when you're looking at the potential of a quarterback because I do feel like all the all-time greats have that trait of being a great communicator and being able to talk to their teammates with ease. And I think Howard showed that he's fluent in that really. Another thing is these two, Jack Sawyer and Howard, definitely fit the culture. Another major checkpoint. Just the way they carry themselves, the way they want to play the game of football. It fits the Steeler way. Uh, and finally, in the first like 20 minutes, if you listen to hear how Will Howard talks about the Penn State game and how they passed up on him and how going into that week he was a different person, that's how he should be for every game ever he plays, every game he plays in the NFL. He should have that Tom Brady chip on his shoulder. All 32 teams didn't even want you. The Steelers, I mean, we wanted you, but first it didn't seem that way for 5 rounds now, did it? So carry that chip on your shoulder, take it into every week. Just listen to that first 20 minutes about how he talks to that. That is the mentality he needs to bring to every game, every week of practice. Because everything he does in the NFL should be with that mentality. But that has been Steelers' latest. I've been your host, Cole Dennis, and I will see you Monday.